In Monster Hunter Wilds Beta 2.0, we finally have got our hands on Arkveld, the flagship monster of Monster Hunter Wilds. I finally managed to get my first kill on him live on stream, which was uploaded yesterday, but now I've had some time to reflect, and having watched back all of the footage as well as other creators taking it on, I've formed some opinions on him, and ultimately want to share why I think Arkveld might just be the best flagship monster we've ever got. And there may be a lot more to this guy than meets the surface, so I recommend watching to the end if you want to hear a couple theories. Of course, they're spoiler free and just complete speculation on my part, but I understand if some people don't want to hear that. I'm also giving away yet another copy of Monster Hunter Wilds. Stay tuned for more info. Okay, so first and foremost, the design and spectacle of Arkveld is unmatched pretty much in anything we've seen in the franchise. Of course, you may argue things like Safi'jiiva, Fatalis, or even Geismagorn could rival this, but in terms of you just being 1v1 with a monster out in the world, for me, this is unmatched. I know many people are struggling to run the beta, and if they do, they're running on low settings, but the footage you're seeing right now is recorded with high. I did have a couple FPS hiccups, but for me the game ran pretty well and looked incredible. That means I was able to admire the Arkveld fight in all of its glory. I did have to lock in, so I wasn't paying too much attention, but even after reviewing the footage later on, there are so many incredible moments to the fight, it's unreal. The fight starts off as this ominous sort of just 1v1. It doesn't feel like much of a different monster. It has its basic attacks with the chain whipping, which gives the player time to understand and learn how the physics of its chain sort of work, which plays a much larger part later on that I'll get into. But a little bit later on in the hunt, as you've probably seen in the trailer, Arkveld enters his power-up state, which, again, if you watched the live stream, you would have seen my reaction to that. I didn't think this would be an actual thing in the game.
God damn. It can do that in the beta. I thought that was just a trailer thing for cinematic effect. Oh. What the? Yo! Okay. Wow.
I truly believe that was just going to be a sort of cutscene in the game's story, so witnessing it live in the beta was quite the experience. Once he enters this powered up state, however, his chains begin to glow purple, and he gets a whole new arsenal of attacks relating to his chains, some of which causing insane explosions. And these are so cool to witness, even though sometimes they are a bit much and you can't even tell what's happening on the screen. Of course, periodically through the fight as well, if you do hit these purple chains enough, it kind of knocks them out of this powered up state, and the feeling and sound of actually landing that, super satisfying to say the very least. And something a lot of people have been pointing out as well, especially in my chat, is the sound design of Arkveld. I knew this direction of the game was already very well handled and in a positive direction from fighting Raidou in Beta 1, but Arkveld takes it to yet another level, which I feel like a broken record saying this, but it's true. Everything from how his chains sort of jangle around, to the deep boom of the explosions, to just the guttural roar it makes whenever it moves around. They perfected this to a T, and the background soundtrack that plays whilst you're fighting him just adds to the eeriness. And I'd say ominous is the theme that shrouds Arkveld. It's almost conveyed to us that we don't truly know what's going on here. When you begin a quest, Alma, your handler, makes the point in telling you that not very much is known about the monster in the first place, so you have to handle it with caution. And even having had to fight it now, we still of course don't know anything. But what we do know is that it ties into the story, which we will get into. And this might not even be the final version for all we know. Another point I wanted to bring up, being as this is the subject we're talking about, you know, it being a flagship monster, I wanted to directly compare it, in a sense, to Nergi or even Magnum Arlo. For reference, Nergigante is my favourite monster. So if I sound like I'm hating, just to let you know, I'm absolutely not. But when you look at Nergi, what do you see? You have a technically sound fight that's perfectly timed, tests the hunter in the fundamentals of the game across the board, and while it is subjective, I believe it has a pretty cool design. But that's kind of it. There's not much else to Nergi outside of that. I mean, the story of World was thin, to say the least. I mean, not much really happened. And while the Nergi fight is incredible, it doesn't have spectacle. Whereas moving into Rise with Magnum Arlo, this did change a little bit. The visual spectacle of Magnum Arlo was definitely helped by all of the sort of purple, fiery explosions and animations. Furthermore, it did have ties to the story, with us originally thinking it was part of the rampages. This turned out not to be true, but it did still add to the moment of finally facing it. Although we did face it pretty early in Rise, which didn't help. But even so, if you compare this to Arkveld, it's not even close. A comparison I couldn't help but continue to make while I was trying to get my first kill was how Arkveld truly feels like an Elden Ring boss more than a monster from Monster Hunter. I also expected to finally get it down just for a phase 2 to start. And again, this might not be the final version of Arkveld for all we know. As we know, Nergigante and Magnamarlo at the very least got their sort of variant species in subsequent expansions, Ruiner Nergigante and Scorned Magnamarlo. So even if this is just the Arkveld we fight in base game Wilds, who knows what else we might see from it in the future. And that does scare me a little bit, because Arkveld already is a tough fight. But bear in mind, I've put a lot of time into Monster Hunter World leading up to the release of the beta. It still took me a little over 3 hours to finally get the first kill. Bear in mind, if I was going for the capture, I would have had it done on attempt 2. And also, naturally, we are kind of heavily nerfed, and demo flagship monsters or beta flagship monsters are always artificially scaled up in difficulty. So the full release version of Arkveld should be much easier, but even so, that doesn't mean it's an easy monster, especially when you try and look through the lens of a new or casual player. Arkveld is very difficult to predict, and his telegraphing while you're still learning him seems all over the place. Because of the waviness of his chains, it's hard to tell what's an attack and what's the wind up. He'll constantly bait you to react before actually swinging, sometimes with delay. Other times the attack comes crashing down in an instant. His giant ultimate kind of red explosion attacks are much easier to sort of predict and react to. But with that being said, poor positioning at the wrong time will just instantly cart you in the beta. The hardest part of the fight for me though did revolve around his chains, which is natural, being as they are his weapon, but it's because of the physics the chains have. My thought when I originally saw him was that the chains were more of a weapon he controls opposed to a physical part of his body. But he very quickly teaches you that they are a part of his body. This is because the chains have physics as if they were the monster. They push you around. If the chains are swinging towards you, you can't just roll through them. Like, if a Barrioff was charging towards you, you couldn't roll through the Barrioff, you know, because it's a physical monster coming towards you. You can't roll into it with iframes. I know there might be some caveats to that, but you get the point. And it's the same with the chains. If you roll into the chains, they're going to hit you. With that being said, you can roll over or under the chains with the right timing and right positioning. However, with the waviness and unpredictability of the chains, it can be quite difficult to react properly, or even tell what to react to. The range of them is also deceptive. There was times where I thought I was more than adequately distanced away from him, yet they just stretched that little bit extra. Depending on his mode, they also have AoE effects, and even a separate set of chains will crash down after the first attack. So you may barely roll under the first chain that drops down, but then you'll get hit by the second one which drops at a slight delay later. This pushes the hunter's spatial awareness in a major way that doesn't get tested too often. I mean, you really have to pay keen attention to what the attack is and where you are when the attack's being performed. There's not necessarily always a guaranteed way out of the attack. Obviously with longsword, I had multiple counters which did help with this, but other weapons don't have that luxury. Well, okay, maybe that's enough about the gameplay aspect for now. If you haven't had the opportunity to fight it yet, or if you can't run the beta, if I was you, I would look at it as a bonus. This means you get to fully experience Arkveld in all its glory when the game fully releases. Because of course, if you didn't already know, Beta 2.0 is using the exact same game version as Beta 1 did. There's been no performance or optimization changes in this beta since the first one. There is a benchmark tool on Steam, however, that you can run, so if you are curious how your PC will size up the true game, you can do that there. Now finally, I want to just touch on sort of the story ties and a bit of speculation. We know from the trailer that essentially the whole story revolves around the little boy and Arkveld. There is a ton of mystery surrounding him, with the themes of him being chained up or locked away being heavily prevalent and deep-rooted into the design of the monster, as we already discussed. Naturally, this leaves so many questions, such as why? Why was he chained up? Why was he locked away? Was he actually the cause of a destructive act? Or was it like a primordial Malzeno situation where he was actually the defender and just portrayed in the poor light over time? There's also a lot of theory that this might not be the final version of Arkveld. From my perspective, what do we see Arkveld do? He wraps his chains around monsters and seems to siphon power from them. I don't know about you, but to me, this gives me the impression that after he does this enough times, he's going to reach a state of evolution, or he'll unlock his true potential as such. What that looks like, I have no idea. It could be something to do with the elements. From the trailer, we see him attacking Raidao as the primary kind of fight. So if we then assume he's going to do this to every apex across the maps, maybe he ends up siphoning 4 elements. Each one of those elements could be embedded in each one of his chains. And then we have an Alatreon type of situation on our hands. Good luck. We also had the reveal of Gormagala, who has a striking resemblance to Arkveld. I can't help but feel that this will play a major part in the story and could very well be one of the reasons as to why Arkveld was locked away. But what do you think about all this? Do you like Arkveld? And do you think this is the final version of him that we're seeing in the beta, or will he reach even higher heights in the full release of Wilds? Now, as mentioned, I will be doing a giveaway of Monster Hunter Wilds. So far, we've already given away 5 keys across the community, thanks to 2 community members, Nameless and Odin, pitching in to help. I wanted to give away one last copy, the key being provided thanks to Fanatical. And much like we did recently, I'll be giving this away live. Tune in live here on YouTube on Saturday the 22nd of February, as this will be one of the final streams I do before Wilds comes out. I'll be picking a winner from live chat, so I wish you all luck. Thanks for watching.